Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast, your ticket to all things college football. Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? Join us as we talk college football from the national championship to college rivalries to bowl games to the Heisman Trophy to which conference is the best. We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between.
What is up? Welcome to the GSMC Football Podcast on a Wednesday here, and I am Tom Dougherty, your host, which means this is the college football edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, which, as always, is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Make sure to subscribe to this, tell your friends, spread it around. If you enjoy this podcast, it will come up on your whatever you're listening this on if you subscribe to it, and you can find it quite easily. All right, we're going to jump right into it today on this college football edition, and we're going to talk about some new quarterbacks down in Los Angeles. Obviously, Josh Rosen gone from UCLA, now a Arizona Cardinal. Sam Darnold, a New York Jet, gone from USC. We've talked about USC quarterbacks a little bit. Obviously, Matt Fink's over there. You got J.T. Daniels coming in early. Should be a senior in college, high school. Should be a senior in high school coming in next year, but he enrolls early into USC, becomes that class of 2018 guy instead of 2019. And is already being talked about as a possible starter. The coaches like him. He was there during spring football. He's talking to the coaches, working with the playbook. I mean, so he's all over. So we're going to figure out who the new UCLA frontrunner is. UCLA frontrunner. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is going to be a guy who probably will be the front runner for that job. I mean, Chip Kelly obviously is a new face as well into UCLA, so there's a lot of changes there in Westwood. But I feel like that if there's anybody to pick a new quarterback, that's the thing. I think one of the reasons why Chip Kelly liked this job opening is that he got a clean slate. Obviously, couldn't recruit anybody to be quarterback quite yet. He's going to have to wait a couple years for that to get his own guy in there, his own recruit. But he can take Jim Moore's recruit. And if they're qualified to get onto the UCLA football team, they're probably quite a good athlete and can be utilized in a Chip Kelly system. So Dorian Thompson-Robinson, a freshman, as he's a quick guy too, and obviously could be a guy who could easily get into that spread offense that got Chip Kelly all those wins up in Oregon. So we're going to do that for this first segment, maybe even leak into the second segment some talk on these new quarterbacks down in Los Angeles. And then in the final two segments, we're actually going to go through and do something that I kind of like doing, like bouncing around different conferences. But like we do, we're going to spread it through a couple episodes on here, and we'll do the Big Ten today. We're going to go through coaches, which is actually fun because I like those are the one guys. I mean, as much as there's a coaching carousel in this sport in college football, we do, when there is a coaching carousel, you kind of have to identify every coach every year. But I also like to evaluate every coach, especially those who have been sticking around. The Big Ten hasn't had too much turnover in the coaching world yet. Especially in the Big Ten East. James Franklin's still at Penn State. You got Urban Meyer at Ohio State. Jim Harbaugh, Mark D'Antonio, so over there at Michigan State, Paul Chryst at Wisconsin. Obviously, now we have Scott Frost as the newbie at Nebraska. But we'll also talk about some of the other guys at some of the lesser schools as well, and see how they are faring and will fare this season, and if their job might be on the line if this season doesn't turn out too well. And then we're going to go through all the different conferences. So next on Friday, we'll probably do I think I'll do the SEC on Friday, Pac-12 on Monday, and then I'll come back for the ACC and the Big 12 next week as well. So that'll be cool. It will fill up the rest of the next week as well. So we'll do that throughout the next few episodes, talking about coaches. Which, I mean, that's the thing. They are the visible personnel on that in that roster. I mean, players come and go. Lots of turnover in the players. Obviously, they're only there for a certain period of time. Sometimes 3-4 years. I mean, sometimes even 3 years. They leave early. Coaches aren't there. They're the face of these programs. I mean, we all know Dabo Swinney is the Clemson guy. We know obviously Nick Saban's down in Alabama. So we like coaches and we like talking about them and evaluating them because, I mean, especially like Chip Kelly, perfect example. We're talking about him today a little bit because he's a guy who's been in the Pac-12 before. Now he's coming down in new scenery and is going to try and do it again, especially after a stint in the NFL. We've seen that a couple different times, Nick Saban, where they come back from the NFL and even do and figure out that college is probably the place for them. They actually really have a lot of success on their second time coaching a college football team. So let's jump right into this USC, UCLA stuff. Obviously, I think that if J.T. Daniels is ready, the UCLA coaches, I mean, Clay Helton, I don't know about Clay Helton. That's another thing. We'll get to Clay Helton next week, I guess, when we do the Pac-12. But and what I really think about Clay Helton, he's not the big coach. He's not a Pete Carroll. He's not even. I mean, at least Lane Kiffin had some personality at USC. Clay Helton, I mean, I guess maybe they wanted little changes of pace down there at USC because of the fact that they had so much visibility and so much publicity when it came to what happened to Steve Sarkisian before and his arrival and departure from campus. They wanted to maybe keep their coaching staff more under wraps when it comes to the media. And Clay Helton's definitely that guy because he's not really that exciting at all. He's going to keep his head down. He's going to keep his work in front of him, and he's not going to worry about the media at all. Or at least getting involved, doing anything that would allow the media to get involved. Sarkisian, obviously, I mean, he was the fact that he had to be let go and had to move along from him because of some issues with his health. So that's take it for what it is there, but not really the big. Clay Helton's not. You're going to be your big cerebral genius coach guy. He's going to be kind of a game manager, manage this team guy, and I mean, I guess that's what they want right now at USC. They've always been a program that to have these big visible coaches, big kind of glamorous rock star coaches. Pete Carroll, Lane Kiffin. So we're going to wait and see if maybe Clay Helton is just a stepping stone on the way to waiting for a bigger coach to open up. If they can lure David Shaw down from Stanford, even though if the NFL can't even lure David Shaw, I don't think he's going anywhere. I would never leave that Stanford job to live in Palo Alto and be able to be in charge of that entire pro. I mean, he gets pretty much full say on the entire program over there at Stanford, and he doesn't have to disclose any money. I mean, it's a private school. I mean, so is USC. I mean, unless they just absolutely jack up the rate he's been getting at Stanford, his pay at Stanford, but yeah, I don't think he's going to be going anywhere. Or maybe waiting for Tom Herman's welcome to expire at Texas, because that could happen pretty much any point, and USC could be on their new coach. But we're going to talk about stuff that's happening now. So, and that's the quarterback situation down at USC. Obviously, you got a bunch of decisions there. You also got decisions at UCLA. Remember, UCLA just got Bolton Spate coming over from Michigan. They also have Devin Monster, who had played a little bit last year, Matt Lynch, Spate, and then, of course, Thompson-Robinson. Is the favorite, obviously, to get this. Obviously, Robinson was a guy, number 2 dual threat quarterback on the ESPN rankings for 2018. Went to Bishop Gorman. I mean, Bishop Gorman High School. If you guys don't know high school football, go look up Bishop Gorman High School and their record for the last few years. I mean, and go look at just the pictures of their program. This team is a first class high school football program if there ever was one. It's almost like a junior college over there. It's crazy. The facilities they have, the tools they have for the players are crazy. I mean, I think, what was this? Didn't Snoop Dogg's kid go? Snoop Dogg's son went there. They've got celebrity backing and money coming from all over the place. So I mean, private school, it can pretty much do whatever they want when it comes to getting good quality resources for their players. So I mean, Bishop Gorman, that's a high school program. So this guy already knows what it's like to be expected to win, already knows what it's like to be in the spotlight, already knows what it's like to play in that kind of offense, I'm sure, because they did run a very similar offense to Chip Kelly's when he was in Oregon. So you can expect something there that is going to be pretty popular and pretty promising. So I know there's other guys underneath him. Spate coming in as a transfer. Modster has had some experience backing up for Josh Rosen. So I mean, I would not call them out or say they're out of the race, but the Thompson-Robinson's the clear favorite because of the fact that he's the highly touted recruit that he is. I mean, obviously down at was it? Matt Fink, I think JT Daniels, I know, was there, but obviously, who was there as one? Jack Sears, that's what I was trying to think of. Jack Sears is the other guy down at at USC. Matt Fink and Jack Sears were the big two battling it out during spring football. Obviously, JT Daniels was there as well, but he was more working with the coaches and getting that playbook down. Obviously, graduated early to enroll into USC. I mean, this guy looks like, I don't know what they're growing, what they have in the water down there. I know he went to high school down in that area anyways, but the guy doesn't look like he should be in high school anymore. So, I completely understand why he's not wanting to stick around the old high school halls and play football for his high school team again, because he's ready to play college football. Look at the guy. He's ready to go. So, the guy went to Mater Dei in Santa Ana. That's also another football powerhouse, absolute powerhouse. And I think 3 years was enough for him, as he's ready to go. The guys are the size are ready to do it. You gotta be pretty special. There's a lot of guys who want to go to UCLA. There's a lot of high schools out there. There's a lot of quarterbacks out there. Look at where I think Josh Rosen went to Centennial, or Josh Rosen went to another big high school down there. You could have go look who's the quarterback there. Who was the next guy after Josh Rosen? Probably could have gone to USC. From Mater Dei, I think Josh Rosen may have gone to Mater Dei himself. Would that be hilarious? I could find that out in about 2 seconds. But JT Daniels, I think he's ready. I think we're going to see two really young, raw, talented quarterbacks down in LA this season. We're going to come back in the next segment and talk about it a little bit more as well. He went to Bellflower. Oh, that's true. St. John Bosco. That's the other one. That's the guy. That's the one that's like Bishop Gorman of LA, basically. St. John Bosco has been very good. They even beat De La Salle, which is one of the most decorated, if not the most decorated, high school football team, at least in California. De La Salle High School in Concord. That's a private school that gets guys from all over the world and brings them over actually to play. They've got guys from Samoa, from Guam, from everywhere. That's just an example of what high school football do. Bishop Gorman does the same thing, and that's where Thompson-Robinson's from. Dorian, I'm just going to call him Dorian. I don't really. Thompson-Robinson's a mouthful. Dorian's from. From Bishop Gorman, he could be a lightning rod in that Chip Kelly offense. So look out for UCLA. UCLA. Maybe not this year. Next year, junior year for Dorian. I think it's great that he's a freshman now and is still young enough to kind of get integrated into that Chip Kelly offense. I think it's going to take him. It's not that. It's just more the speed, tempo, keeping up with the tempo, being always ready on the next play. Plays over next play. You got to keep that tempo in your head. And if they want to do that same kind of speed game where you're literally counting on your hands seconds in between plays, That's he's going to have to get used to that. And I think the fact that he was at the spread offense at Gorman and high expectations there, he's going to be ready for it. And that's what I think for UCLA. For USC, I think it's a little more up in the air because you have a guy who literally was a junior in high school 2 months ago. All right, we'll come back and talk some more about USC and J.T. Daniels when we come back, so everybody stay tuned.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back, GSMC Football Podcast, second segment of the day today here as we're talking about USC quarterbacks, UCLA quarterbacks as well down there in LA, is that both those teams lost their quarterback to the first round of the draft. I mean, you got to feel good about that when you have two guys from LA down there. Neither of them obviously ended up in LA. Both those teams have quarterbacks with Philip Rivers for the Chargers and Jared Goff for the Rams, but now Rosen's on the Arizona Cardinals. You got Sam Darnold down over there in New York with the Jets, and that's a whole other episode probably, or a whole other segment. I'm sure Jesse, my buddy over there, my colleague does the football show as well. It doesn't, not as much the college football, but more basic, more general football stuff. I'm more focused on the college football. I'm sure Jesse will have his fair share of chatting about our former USC and UCLA quarterbacks now over there in the NFL, how they're going to fare and how fast we're going to see them on the field this season in the NFL. But back to the college football, back to campus we go as J.T. Daniels, 6'2", trying to get up to 210 pounds, like I said, was dealing with the school. Obviously, he had to finish up all of his schoolwork to be able to graduate. He's got 2 more semesters of high school, basically, to finish up with independent study or with a tutor, or however he's doing it. But he still made it to every spring practice. Like I said, couldn't get on the field. But I mean, imagine being Jack Sears and Matt Fink and being on the field, and not only are you having up and down kind of like, trying to get your footing at USC during spring ball, you got this kid who's literally, what is he, 17? Probably 18, coming in, who's just redeclared his class. I mean, honestly, his explanation, he's right. He's been starting since a freshman. He's been starting in the best league in college and high school football, the Trinity League down there in Los Angeles at Mater Dei. He broke Matt Barkley's records at Mater Dei, Football Power, by the way, in 3 years of starting before he even his senior year. So he's like, I'm done. I mean, I could read you. He's like, I'm done. I played started with 3 seasons. I've been calling my own play since my sophomore year. I'm done. I'm done. I mean, so he started for 3 years. That's basically all you need. He's got the reps. He's got the reps, the amount of experience underneath. He just did it. He got started as a freshman. Basically, instead of starting as a sophomore, junior, senior year, he just did freshman, sophomore, junior year. And that's how good he is. I thought he was a little bit taller, 6'2", but that's all right. Maybe he can get an inch, another inch. But yeah, he was there, obviously working with the coaches, doing film, mental reps. They say. I mean, mental reps. Sure, that's not really as big of a deal. But on the film, talking with the coaches, obviously being a huge shadow over those 2 guys who were actually throwing the ball physically and trying to actually get some real reps in, physical reps, and might be all for naught. That might be a battle of the backups back right there with the expected, or I don't know, starter elect. I don't know how you want to say it, for JT Daniels, because nothing has been decided yet. And don't expect Clay Helton to be too off the cuff about it either. The guy doesn't really talk very loud anyways. So don't really expect anything there with that. But obviously, the USC offensive coordinator, that's T. Martin. He's definitely likes what he sees. He's been quoted on here. He said, quoted it. He says, he attacks it, man. He gets after it. He's a gym rat when he comes to watching film. He's been doing installs since official visits. He's the first player I ever saw that on his official visit, all he wanted to do was football. So, I mean, the guy is all football. You can't knock that. I mean, that's the kind of recruit you're getting these days, especially with the fact that we're starting off. So, I mean, that's a whole nother conversation as youth football. That's a whole nother conversation regarding the safety of youth football. I'm not going to get into that today, but this guy's been playing high octane, high competition, high expectation football since he was 13 years old. I mean, I know probably maybe 12 years old, maybe even earlier than that, maybe 8 years old. He's a quarterback, so he's probably been standing back there. He hasn't taken as many hits, but since he's a little kid, and he's been probably the best player on his team since he's a little kid as well. So the guy knows that he obviously is good at football. It's really an extra. Well, I wouldn't call it a bonus. It's an expected thing to be very passionate about it. But like you said, he's the first recruit ever to come in on just his visit and not be like in awe of. I mean, I'm sure he's been to USC before. You go to school 30 miles from USC. You've probably been to the campus before your official visit. But I mean, they start recruiting these kids in sophomore, freshman year, especially to get a guy like that who didn't even go to a senior year of high school, should be in his senior year of high school now. But he didn't get overwhelmed by the grandeur of the campus, USC campus, which can be kind of overwhelming sometimes, I can imagine, for a young quarterback. Nope, he just came right in there. He's like, where's the film room? Let's talk ball. He wanted to talk ball right away. I mean, that's that. I mean, I think you have to do some. There's some starting lines. There's some things you have to do. Not to anybody, even if you're the most decorated, or I don't want to call it decorated, but just a very highly touted quarterback coming out of high school. I mean, Kyler Murray was one of the most decorated high school football players ever, and he's already on his second college. We went to A&M and transferred. So, I mean, it might be a little different out there in those parts of the country in LA. I mean, when you're literally driving 35 miles from your high school to where you're going to be going to college, it's all kind of in the family. You're staying right there. You're all right there. You're not worrying about, I'm gonna have to take my trip to College Station today, or take my trip to Stillwater today. I mean, he's from Dallas. If Kyler Murray's from Dallas, how far is Dallas from College Station? Probably 100 miles, not 35 miles, but it's not that far away. I digress in that part. But no, JT Daniels, definitely not afraid of the spotlight, definitely not afraid of the challenge, I guess. I mean, he's for a kid who's a junior in high school, or should be, who just technically finished up his junior year in high school. This is a guy who's, there's quotes all over the place. There's quotes from the quarterback coach at USC. There's quotes from like I said, Chip, and I don't know about Chip Kelly. That's the wrong school there, but the USC offensive coordinator, he's special. The guy is special, and the guy is leaps and bounds ahead of any other freshman who's come in looking like, the most further along. This was the USC quarterbacks coach, Brian Ellis. He's further along than most freshmen I've ever been around, and that's exciting. So, it's exciting. It's very exciting, but I want to get him on the field. I want to see. I don't know why he couldn't be at spring practice, whether it was too early or he hadn't technically declared that he had enrolled into the school. So maybe he has to wait until. I think he might have to wait until August to actually get on the field again. Which is fine. The guy, the kid, he's obviously, the coaches know what they're doing down there. They just had a quarterback who probably should have been the number one overall quarterback, but then there's the Cleveland Browns. But so he ended up being the number two, second quarterback selected in the NFL draft. Ended up probably going to a better franchise. The Jets have actually had some success. They've been to an AFC Championship game lately. The Browns not so much, but no. I think he's in good hands there at USC. That's J.T. Daniels. I mean, like I said, if you're Matt Fink and Jack Sears and you just had kind of an up and down spring football practice, you're like, dang, we finally got that Darnold kid out of here, and we thought we had a year to at least mess around and try and see if one of us can get on the field and play well and show and maybe get a starting spot for next season. But nope, we had JT Daniels, who has some probably either, I don't know if it was his idea or it was his parents or he had some sort of mentor. He's like, oh yeah, you got to go to USC now. You got a chance because they don't really know they don't have a clear number one guy who you have to be. You just have to be better than those two schmoes over there. Not those guys, they're fine, but yeah, so he took advantage of a situation where he definitely saw a kind of an inroads to that starting position, and if the coaches are that goo goo gaga over him, I mean, they probably have been for quite a while. They're probably just waiting with bated breath to get him on campus. So maybe they were one of the I don't want to accuse anybody of anything trying tampering with a recruit, but whoever told J.T. Daniels, hey, you can actually forego your senior year, right, and play now, is a smart person, because I think he's going to end up being, I don't know about the starter week 1, but he'll be there on the sidelines week 1, if not, and he'll be ready to go just in case any mistakes happen. And I mean, it's college football. What do you expect? I mean, I think that the talent is interesting because in college football, talent sometimes can just take over a certain game or take over a certain drive, and you can look really good. And if he's the most talented guy, then he should be on the field. It's not that difficult. And the same thing at UCLA. Shifting back over there, Dorian Thompson-Robinson is probably the most talented guy. These are two kids. These are two kids that went to one of the most storied high schools in college high school history. I mean, in high school football history. I mean, Bishop Gorman High School. Go look up Bishop Gorman High School football. Tell me that doesn't look like at least like a junior college program or a small college program. Look, all the facilities, even the uniforms look good. Their turf field, it's all top of the line. Oh, I mean, Snoop probably paid a bunch of money for it, which is fine. That's cool. But this is something that these kids are not afraid of the spotlight anymore. It's not like, oh, I'm going to college. No. I'm transitioning from basically a college prep area where it's mini college to actual college. Instead of high school to college, it's like mini college to actual college. Bishop Gorman High School is the mini college. Modern day high school has been a football power, playing in the Trinity League. I mean, is the Trinity League St. John Bosco and Centennial in the same league? Because I know I went to Folsom High School, and if we're going to finish off the segment with a little high school football information here, a little high school football quip. Folsom High School has been the power in Northern California for public schools for the last. I mean, Jake Browning was there. He's at Washington for the last 5-6 years. They've won 3 state championships in the last, I think, since I graduated in 2012, so 2010, I think. The last 8 years, they've won 3 state championships. Jake got one. Actually, I think Jake got 2, didn't he? So they won 4. They've won 4 state championships. Sorry, they've won 4 state championships. They just won one this last season. Jake got 2, and they got 1 before Jake Browning was the starting quarterback too. So we played. I mean, they played Sarah High School down in Gardena. So I mean, that was when Marquise Lee was there. Now he went to USC. He's on the Jacksonville Jaguars. So we didn't play. I mean, we were able to avoid kind of those big schools down there, except for we did play Oceanside one year, kick their butts, kicked Sarah's butts. They played. They never had to play Centennial, never had to play Modern Day because I think they were maybe the division up. But then we did have to play De La Salle. And De La Salle had Austin Hooper, who went to Stanford, is now on the Atlanta Falcons, went to the Super Bowl. I mean, that's the school that's the school that's playing Centennial, playing St. John Bosco, which is where Josh Rosen went, playing Modern Day, which is where J.T. Daniels went. I mean, the guy played for 3 years. There, I mean, high school football in LA. I mean, every time we seem to go, we play against some team in LA. It wasn't some other area. Even though LA is very far reaching, there's got to be 1,000 high schools in Los Angeles. But I mean, looking at that Trinity League, I mean, they call it the Trinity League because it's probably 3 really good schools. I want to find out what this Trinity League is. Who's in this Trinity League? Athletic School, Max Preps, what's the members? All right. Okay, Sarah High School, there you go. Junipero Serra Catholic High School, Mater Dei, Santa Margarita, Servite's one of the schools, and St. John Bosco. So, yeah, okay, there's your Trinity right there. Servite High School, I think, is one of the other ones we actually play in the state championship game. So, there you go. All right, and they played Helix this last season, which is another great kind of. I think they're not a private school; they're public. They're kind of like one of those public charter schools or something like that. All right, we've reached the end of the second segment. We made 2 segments talking about LA quarterbacks. Lots more to get to in this episode. As we're going to come back in the next segment and go through the Big Ten coaches. We're going to shift over to the Midwest in the eastern part of this country, get it out of LA, and talk about some coaches. As we're going to go through every conference and go through all the coaches and give some words on them every for the next week or so here on the show. So everybody, stay tuned.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back to GSMC Football Podcast. I do have to amend one statement. I had to go check during the break, but my Folsom Bulldogs, 3 state championships. This should have been 4. Should have been 4. They went 14-1 in between all those championships. Also had to play De La Salle twice. So there you go, De La Salle, who has competed quite well against those schools down in LA. I think the one school to who has their number is St. John Bosco. That's Josh Rosen, basically, who had their number 4 years ago, back when he was playing for them. So maybe I think they even beat Centennial too. So yes, Folsom has 3 state championships. They won one last year. They got one in 2014 and then in 2010. So yeah. I thought 4 was too good to be true. 3 is pretty good though. 3 with 3 different quarterbacks as well, by the way. Spread across. I mean, what is that? 8 years? Almost 10 years. I mean, almost eight years. They're spread across those championships. So, I mean, yeah, high school football is fun. We have to do a high school football show maybe eventually here, but we're still in college. We're going over to the Big Ten. We're going to do some talk on the Big Ten coaches. Obviously, Jim Harbaugh. We've talked about him quite a bit. Urban Meyer, I haven't really gotten to. Urban Meyer is an interesting guy. Urban Meyer is kind of your... Obviously, him and Nick Saban get a lot of comparisons. Both winning coaches. I mean, if you look at actually right now active coaches in college football, only 3 active coaches have, or actually no, 4 active coaches have national titles right now. 4. Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M, he won one with Florida State, member with Jameis Winston. Obviously, Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney, and Urban Meyer, and that's it. Nobody else has it. Nobody else has one, because think about it. Who's won a national championship lately? Les Miles? Yeah, that was a while ago. Alabama, pretty much everything has been Alabama. Yeah, think about it. Clemson got in there. That's Dabo. Florida State got in there. That's your guy over the Mr. Fisher. Ohio State got in there. That's yeah. Your boy Urban Meyer over there. So, yeah, only 4 coaches that are active have won national championships. And one of them is in the Big Ten, and that is Urban Meyer. And that's a guy who it was interesting. I remember back when he was with Florida, and had Tim Tebow, obviously won 2 championships with Tim Tebow, and was like, oh, I'm done, I'm going to go put back with my family. It's amazing how football can just call you back. He gets the call, and you get a job at Ohio State. I mean, it was kind of the perfect. Jim Tressel goes and leaves has the issues with Terrell Pryor and all the scandalous stuff over there with the crazy rules, NCAA rules. I won't get into that, but he says he has the opening. It's like, oh, there's a pretty good program over there in Columbus, huh? I'm going to take that job. So now Urban Meyer is probably, sorry, Jim, he's the best coach in the conference. He is. You're 0-3 against him. You're 0-3 against Urban Meyer, Jim. So, and Jim Harbaugh is who I'm talking about. But Jim Harbaugh is right there as well. James Franklin, honestly, I love James Franklin. I've loved James Franklin since he was the head coach of Penn State, because that's the guy who had to come in and right that ship and come in after with no recruits. He lost all those sanctions and against his program, came in against all odds, gets Saquon Barkley, gets a guy like Trace McSorley in there to right that ship of the program. Penn State is now relevant. Penn State's been relevant for the last few years, and you have James Franklin to thank for that, and he still has Trace McSorley this year. Who can be a very good quarterback for him and could get that Penn State team. When you're in that Big Ten East, you have Franklin. You have 3 massive coaches. Not only do you have 3 massive programs, you have 3 massive coaches in their own right. Jim Harbaugh, who's been in the NFL, one with Stanford, Andrew Luck, Niners. Obviously finally getting a real quarterback who can do something for him in Shea Patterson this season. But he's almost storied, but he's been a very successful coach in his own right. You got James Franklin, who pulled Penn State out of the quagmire of scandal and turned them into a championship contender, and has brooded a amazing running back who's going to probably do great things in the NFL, even though he's not my favorite, and Urban Meyer. And I haven't even gotten to the last guy yet, who's probably the guy who is actually the guy who's been there the longest. But Urban Meyer at Ohio State just doesn't miss a beat. Whether it's his offense, it's his defense that needs to be adjusted, he can do it. He can do it. He has the best coaching staff in the conference, I think, which is a big thing. You're only one guy. It's just you. And when you can delegate to good coaches and you have good assistants and you pay your assistants enough, that's when your program takes the next step. That's why Ohio State was able to sneak into that college football playoff, get that 4th seed, stun the 1st seed, and then win the national championship game, because his players were ready. He can only do so much. He calls the plays. He's a genius, blah, 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 whatever you want to say. But his coaches get those players ready to play like none other. And same kind of thing down in Alabama. How does Kirby Smart in his first season at Georgia gets the national championship game? Because he's a darn good coach. And guess where he was before? He was the defense coordinator for Nick Saban. So, good coaches breed good coaches. Good programs breed good staffs. Good staffs breed good programs. It kind of goes hand in hand. Where you can talk about all you want. I haven't gotten to Mike D'Antonio yet, but Mark D'Antonio over there at Michigan State. But with Nick Saban, you can, like I said, you only can do so much. You can go recruit, get your good players, but you got to be able to coach those players. And when you can be the octopus and have your tentacles kind of everywhere with your assistants, and they can be just extensions of you, that is a great tool to have, because number one, your message is being passed along correctly. Number two, your expectations are being spread across evenly, so there's no coaches telling you to do something different, or coaches who are letting players slack off or whatever. Your expectations your standards are being held high across the board with your coaches, and you can have accountability. So you can have ability to kind of have eyes everywhere. Where I'm not calling your coaches snitches, but your coaches are reporting back to your head coach so they can be in the know. And if you have assistants who are going to be able to come and tell you what's going on straight up, that goes far as well. You don't need any head assistant coaches trying to cover up for players or what have you. So you're probably as good as your head coach. You can do the chain analogy. You're only the weakest link in the chain. Everybody's only as good as that weak link. So even the top link, and that's a reminder there at Ohio State. So whether that's what Jim Harbaugh needs to figure out, getting some better assistants in there, better coordinators. I think Michigan just needs to kind of get out of their own way. When they find a good quarterback, stay healthy. And they'll be fine. That'll be a key for them. I mean, all these teams are up in the top 25 right now. Michigan State's going to reload after a nice season last year. Mike D'Antoni, I think this has been probably a really taxing offseason for him due to the fact that he had to deal with all that scandal stuff with the sexual assault issues that they had at Michigan State and such. So, I mean, hopefully that's all getting handled. And he's, of course, a great coach to have there because of the fact that he can be a good face for that program and can weather the storm of that issue and handle it in the best way it needs to be handled. But I mean, and he's also a great coach on the field. I mean, this is a guy who called a fake field goal to win a football game in the last play of the game. I mean, he loves his football and he loves to win. So hopefully there at Michigan State they can get back up in the good graces of the Big Ten. Obviously, we've only talked about the first 4 coaches of the Big Ten. We have a whole other segment to go and talk about the other, what was it? There's probably 14 teams in this conference, or 10 coaches. I'll give you my thought. Paul Chryst is one thing. He's Wisconsin. Paul Chryst is perfect for Wisconsin. Not too flashy, great X's and O's guy. I mean, he's a guy who I think can be a nice. I mean, I'm trying to think of the word here. A nice game manager, a nice leader for a program. I think that obviously he gets his players gets his players ready to perform. But he's not really the big game coach. I don't think he's not really that big. The thing is, for big games, obviously you always have that camera pointed right at the coach. You know where he is at all times. I kind of lose Paul Chryst on the sideline sometimes. I don't really like where's Paul? He's not the biggest name, obviously, but he's definitely a guy who's taken over this program and turned it into a program that doesn't lose very many games. I mean, obviously their schedule. I can go in my rant about the schedule. Scheduling all I want, and especially because this Wisconsin team's in the other conference Iowa. Iowa's their big competition in that conference. Hopefully Nebraska can get good with Scott Frost. We'll get to Scott Frost in the next segment. But Paul Chryst played college football at Wisconsin. Has gone through his stops on the way to get back to the head coaching position at Wisconsin. Obviously, he's been a tight ends coach, been an offensive coordinator, been a quarterbacks coach at Wisconsin as well. I mean, so he's gone through and done paid his dues. So I mean, I got to give him credit. He's 4-1 in bowl games, 53 and 26 overall in his career. So I mean, not too shabby. Won 2 Western Division titles. But the next step is to get to the next level, win that Big Ten championship game, force the hand of the College Football Playoff Committee. He's got Jonathan Taylor coming back this year, Heisman favorite. Get your running back into a Heisman conversation. I mean, I think is Alex Hornibrook is their quarterback. Hopefully, have a good a quarterback better than that for the next couple of seasons. So I think it's going to be more of big game competition for Wisconsin and recruiting and getting the next big guy in there to be quarterback. Because I mean, at Wisconsin, you could take advantage. Don't let Nebraska take advantage of that division before you do. So don't let Nebraska take advantage of playing against Iowa and Minnesota and who else is in the Big Ten West? Probably Indiana or Illinois or something like that. I mean, these divisions, the way they were before was great. The way they were before was great because they had mixed up the Michigan State and Michigan and Ohio State and Penn State were all in different divisions. Oh, yeah. The West is Northwestern, so that can be a little test for Paul Chryst. Iowa, Purdue, Nebraska, Minnesota, and Illinois. Woo. Woo, woo, woo. I've done this. I've talked about it multiple times. But yeah, Wisconsin, you got Jonathan Taylor. I don't know how much long he's going to be until he goes in the NFL. He's a great running back. And you got Alex Hornibrook he's a serviceable quarterback, but you got to get the next guy in there. Definitely, I would, if I was Paul Chryst, I would, even this season, his record, his schedule isn't too tough. Last year, look at their schedule last year. Where's Wisconsin on this thing? Look at their schedule last year. Utah State, Florida Atlantic, at BYU, Northwestern, at home, at Nebraska. They weren't very good last year. Purdue, Maryland at home. Those are both easy wins. At Illinois, they're not very good. At Indiana, they're not very good. Oh, they had to play Iowa at home. Woo. They played Michigan. They didn't have to play Michigan, but they played them at home. Great. And at Minnesota, they're not very good. And then, of course, you go to the Big Ten Championship game and lose to Ohio State in Indianapolis. So, and they lost to Ohio State by 6 points. So they were one score away from forcing the hand of the College Football Playoff Committee. So if he can get that 6-point differential right this season, because their schedule isn't going to be much different than it was this there. They're going to play probably all those same teams in the middle there: Illinois, Indiana, Maryland, Purdue. Hopefully, like I said, Nebraska can be a little better. But so Paul Chryst, focus on winning big games. Focus on recruiting. I think, because you can be a good program if you keep it going with your recruits and getting some more talent in there, especially a quarterback. You can win a bunch of football games with Wisconsin in the next few years. All right, because of the way the divisions are aligned. That is. All right, we'll come back and do some more talk on these Big Ten coaches. I know we haven't even gotten to some of these smaller schools. I do want to give my thoughts on different coaches as well. I think we have some big names to get to as well. So everybody stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, welcome back on a Wednesday here. As we were talking about the Big Ten coaches, we talked about the Big Four, obviously, on Wednesday here. As we were talking about the Big Ten coaches, we talked about the Big Four, obviously, on top of this, on top of the rankings that I'm going to give here in a moment. Obviously, Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, Jim Harbaugh, Mark D'Antonio, and James Franklin. You can't forget about Pat Fitzgerald over at Northwestern has been doing a bunch of good things. This is not the biggest school. It's over there in Evanston. Kind of get overshadowed the fact that it's in Chicago. No, it's in Evanston. It's up there. But the private school. Purdue's not a private school, right? No, it's Indiana University, Purdue. No, it's the only private school in the conference. No, Rutgers is a private school. Maybe not actually either. Well, that doesn't matter. But Pat Fitzgerald is the head coach over there. And we're not going to get into, I'll give you the rest of the head coaches here. We obviously, Jeff Brom's at Purdue. Purdue's not really in anywhere getting close to being a football power. They're more of a basketball school. Minnesota is PJ Fleck, DJ Durkin's at Maryland, Chris Ash at Rutgers, Tom Allen at Indiana, and obviously the big name I was talking about in the last segment was Lovie Smith. Actually, is at Indiana. Not getting much. I'm sorry, Illinois. This is the Chicago Bears head coach, Super Bowl, who took the Bears to the Super Bowl. The Bears to the Super Bowl down in 2006. Lost to Peyton Manning and the Peyton Manning and Peyton Manning and Tony Dungy obviously getting their first Super Bowl with the Colts. That game was in Miami in the rain. But Lovie Smith has been a good coach. He was obviously down with Tampa Bay, a defensive guy, but now he finds himself at University of Illinois and kind of mired in a Fighting Illini mess down there. I think the last big name they've had come out of there was Whitney Merciless back in a few years ago. But those are the other coaches in the Big Ten. They kind of get. Kirk Ferentz is down at Iowa, and then obviously Scott Frost in Nebraska, who apparently, Scott Frost in Nebraska had a chance to get that Florida job. I think he wanted to go to a more. Get out of Florida, get over to a different scenery, get into a different conference. And Nebraska's, they were the school. They were the school. They've won a bunch of national championships. They were very popular in the 90s, 80s. This is a program that has been successful for before, has been gotten used to success for a long time. Obviously, having a couple down years in a row will get rid of that, and then you're not very good for a while. You lose your pedigree to other big top schools like Ohio State, Michigan State, and Penn State. But being in that conference, like I said, being in that side of the conference in that division can prove fruitful. As we've already seen it, basically Nebraska this year, we've done plenty of talk on their schedule this year. Welcome to the Big Ten, Scott Frost. You're going to play everybody. Geez Louise. Compared to the Iowa schedule, look at Iowa. Kirk Ferentz should have a pretty smooth sailing this season. Do we need to go over the schedules again of these teams? The schedule for the schedule last season for Iowa did get a little bit tougher. They had to deal with Penn State at home. They lost to Penn State at home. Had to go to Michigan State, lost that one. Had to play Ohio State. They actually did beat Ohio State. Remember that game? That was a weird game. That was at home. But they had to go to Wisconsin, had to go to Nebraska. But yeah, so they had their tough tide last year. But compared to the Wisconsin schedule, is nothing. And then look at it this year. This year's schedule is absolutely ridiculously easy. I'm sorry, it is. They play Iowa State. Woo! Look at their home and road games. Look at their home and road, the differences. Who they get on the road, who they get at home. Basically the goal is to get the toughies at home. So they make them travel for you. So, looking at this right now, you got Northern Illinois, Iowa State, Northern Iowa to start off the season. Then they play Wisconsin at home. They go your road games. Your toughest road game is Penn State. Yes, they might lose that one. But that's other than that, it's pretty easy. Your other road games are Minnesota and Indiana. Those should both be wins. And Illinois. That's it. You don't play either Michigan school. You don't play Ohio State. You play Northwestern at home, and you play Purdue on the road as well. So that's another. And you play Nebraska at home. So like I said, the toughest travel is Penn State. That's right after the shellacking you'll likely give Maryland when you played them the week before at home. So, compared to the Nebraska schedule, which it's just ridiculous. The Nebraska's got to play. They play a tough Colorado team. They're not messing around with these non-scheduled games. Iowa State. Oh, we play a Power 5 school out of conference. Yeah, we play Iowa State. Whoop-de-doo. Iowa State can be good, but Colorado's is going to be tough this year, and they're in a tough Pac-12, so they got to get some wins. So they have to play Colorado, fortunately, at home. They do sandwich that in between a home game against Akron and a home game against Troy, so it should be both wins. But then they have to go right after that Troy game. They're going right to Ann Arbor, Michigan, for the Michigan game. They have to play at Wisconsin, at Northwestern, at Ohio State. They play at Iowa, home against Michigan State. At Iowa, at Michigan, at Ohio State, at Wisconsin. Have fun with that one, Scott Frost. Welcome to the Big Ten. welcome to the Big Ten. I mean, just whoever makes that schedule is just not warm. Welcoming is not I guess not in their DNA, I guess. But yeah, Scott Frost apparently I saw a report that he had a offer actually to go to Florida. I guess wanted to get out of that state. There was a Nebraska assistant that actually was that it was asked about it and why Dan Mullen obviously being able to get over there as well is a good idea, but the Gators they did want to have Scott Frost. Obviously, why not? He's the hottest coach in your state. They wanted. I think it's probably the fact that they weren't going to give his assistants the deals they wanted. Frost did bring a bunch of people from UCF to Nebraska, and then brought 3 more also. So he brought a lot of guys. Obviously, guys, strength and conditioning coach came over to Lincoln. I think that was the thing. So they didn't want all of his assistants to get fired if he brought them over with him to Florida. So I think that's one of the reasons why he didn't go over to Florida from UCF. So he goes to his alma mater, Nebraska. So I feel like Nebraska also had thought they had a better chance of getting him because he went to he is a Cornhusker at heart. So yeah, Scott Frost. But welcome to the Big 12. I'm sorry, Big 10. Scott Frost, you're going to have to play all the big boys, and you're going to play a lot of them on the road. Like I said, you're going to have to play at Wisconsin, at Ohio State, at Michigan. You get Michigan State at home, whoop-de-doo. You don't have to play Penn State. But, yeah, so have fun with that one. I think honestly, I think for Scott Frost in the first season, a 10-win season is going to be would be amazing. A 9-win season would be nice. An 8-win season would be expected. That's my take, because with his roster right now, none of his recruits, it's all the previous guys who are there right now. So I feel like he's gonna maybe 2-3 years for him to really turn over that roster and get it the way he wants to. It's gonna really test it. In those 2-3 years, though, you're gonna really get to find out how good of a coach he is, because I don't think we'll see how much UCF football you watched, and then you're gonna see how much Nebraska football you watched in comparison, and you're going to see how good of a coach Scott Frost is, and then you're going to find out 2 or 3 years on the road how good of a recruiter he is. So you have to do that first. Obviously, coaching, when you have to coach guys that you didn't recruit, you're coming in cold to a new program. You might have guys transfer here and there, so you're maybe working with some second string, third string guys. If you have some of the top flight guys transfer, I haven't really heard much news about guys transferring from Nebraska. So it could be happening just underneath all the news from the Michigan stuff, being all the transfers from Michigan and such. But in Ohio State, as they have dealt with their own transfer stuff this offseason as well. But I think that it's going to be a really test for Scott Frost. Not only is the schedule tough, but he's coming in with none of his players, with a fresh team, bringing over a bunch of coaches as well, having to really integrate, get the trust of the players, get the grasp of the locker room. These are college kids. These aren't professionals. These aren't professionals who are used to turnover at coaches. These aren't professionals who just usually come to work and do their job and do things. These kids have class. These kids have counselors. These kids have to learn new playbooks likely, and they're 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. So really going to be a test of Scott Frost's coaching abilities his first 2-3 years at Nebraska before he can really get his own recruiting class cycled up to the top to starting positions. So so it's going to really test him this season. I think he could do it. He didn't get hired, didn't get the job for no reason. They didn't want him at Florida for no reason. They know he can do it. They know he was really emotional when he did move over from UCF to Nebraska. Before that, the Orange Bowl they played in, and then obviously UCF, we've gone into all the stuff they're doing regarding the whole national championship undefeated BS. I'm not going to get into that, but the Big Ten, I think, is in good hands when it comes to coaches. Obviously, there's an upper echelon and a lower echelon. Can't forget about Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern. I think he's going to be a guy who, if he wants to stay there, so be it. Win at Northwestern. Try and get those. Northwestern can almost get on the same level as Stanford and Notre Dame, because this is a school where It's a very highly academically rigorous school, high expectations academically, and there's lots of good. I mean, some of those athletic programs there don't mess around. It's a great, like I said, a great academic school, and if you can get guys that are combo guys like you see at Notre Dame and USC, Notre Dame and Stanford, where they can get it in the classroom, they can also play on the field. You can turn that program into something pretty special, and I think Pat Fitzgerald is the guy for that, who's been able to do that already so far. Pretty well, but this is the next step forward is kind of getting into maybe stealing some recruits from Notre Dame, stealing some recruits from Stanford. I mean, hey, you want to come live in this beautiful town on the coast of Lake Michigan instead of having to be 20-30 minutes from it in South Bend? Actually, no, South Bend's right on the water as well, but maybe 15-20 minutes from it versus being literally at the water's edge in Evanston. All right, that'll wrap up the show today. We did a full show today already. I mean, dang, flew by as we did some talk on the USC quarterback situation, the UCLA quarterback situation, Chip Kelly, talked about Big Ten coaches, high school football a little bit even, because we have a high schooler coming into play for USC this season. And he's not a high schooler anymore, or he isn't going to be pretty soon. That's J.T. Daniels. So everybody look out for him this season on the gridiron. We're going to have we're going to be talking about him a lot probably this summer and coming into the summer training camps as well. So everybody have a good middle of your week. It is Wednesday. We'll be back on Friday. So we'll see you then. Bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.